thank you. It's an honor being here. I had the pleasure of having dinner with Jerry and his wife Nancy last night. And what was exciting about the theme of this conference, it's having gone to a bunch of environmentally minded conferences, it seems very pro-actionary, very forward-thinking, very sort of optimistic about what we can do to improve the state of the world. So I'm happy to be a storyteller, share what we've done at AeroFarms to help in a certain element with like water, land insecurities, as well as how do we feed mass populations. So at AeroFarms, our mission is to build farms in cities all over the world so everyone has access to fresh, great-tasting, safe food. And I was inspired from a water standpoint. I was involved, I led a company that helped waterproofing and corrosion control through a nanotechnology and was involved in water infrastructure and learned through that experience how much water goes to agriculture, and the numbers are jaw-dropping. 60% of our fresh water goes to agriculture. Approximately 60% of our, meaning global, freshwater contamination comes from agriculture. So appreciating that if one wanted to solve water, one has to look at agriculture. So armed with that and appreciating here, the image on the upper right is big commercial agriculture, big industrial agriculture. And whether it's smallholder farmers, whether it's larger commercial agriculture, we often we're often clumsy in the process of farming. And that clumsiness leads to, in the case of water contamination, river runoff of pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, of fertilizers that lead to algae blooms, that lead to dead zones, that lead to dead fish and contaminated water. So big challenges from a water standpoint. And then also appreciating the challenges in the supply chain. So in our category of leafy greens, approximately 60% of the food spoils after it comes off the farm. So here you have a highly perishable product that the customer, after all this energy, effort, resources goes into the product, doesn't get to eat. So armed with Solve Water, I started off to figure out how do we go ahead and execute a business plan, like the trend of local food production, decided to focus on leafy green vegetables because of the high perishability, about 12 days, and all the spoilage in the supply chain. Also, there's a tremendous amount of production consolidation. Most of the product is grown what's called in the salad bowl of the United States. It's Salinas, San Joaquin, also in Mexico. So the opportunity of local food production, given the pain points in the supply chain, given the production consolidation, it all aligned with a business model and economics that could make sense. Additionally, this category of food of leafy greens, 11% of food contamination is in the category. Think E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria. And here, the idea of controlled farming, again, seems like it provides a benefit to some of these challenges. And then lastly, as a technology enthusiast, appreciating that when one introduces a new technology, there's often a price premium till an industry matures, till you get economies of scale. And in that, we could organically sell to the industry at a price premium, or we had the best chance of selling without increasing prices. So from a price per pound versus if you think of cash crops like soy, wheat, rice. So anyway, all this gives you an idea as an entrepreneur how I went about deciding what market to go after. So here, this is a videotape of our 8th and 9th farm. So at AeroFarms, we've been farming since 2004. I got involved in 2011, merged with another vertical farming company that had been doing this since 2004. And one of the lessons here is, so as our 8th farm, we would have never built our 8th one until we built our 7th one and 6th one, et cetera. This is our 9th one. This is the largest vertical farm in the world. As Jerry said, we took an old abandoned steel factory and converted it to this state-of-the-art farm. The productivity here is 130 times higher than a field farmer, meaning what we could grow in 1 acre otherwise would take 130 acres in the field. And we do this using 95% less water, 0 pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and about half as much fertilizers, nutrients. From a design standpoint and in terms of achieving goals, as leader of the company, I can help set the vision. I could help set the guiding principles for our engineers, for our plant biologists, and then let them go loose. So one of my influencers, mentors, is Bill McDonough, who some of you may have known. He's the co-author of a book called Cradle to Cradle. And some of the design principles I pulled from that is, how do we eliminate waste? How do we design for disassembly? And what are the right materials in the right places? So here, challenging our engineering team, and we have about 130 people at AeroFarms, of which about half our team are technical in nature. So by that, we have plant biologists, plant physiologists, plant pathologists, molecular biologists, microbiologists. On the engineering side, we have mechanical engineers, structural engineers, lighting engineers, electrical engineers, PLC engineers, process engineers, systems engineers. And then we have a bunch of data scientists and software developers as well. And I mention this because it is illustrative of when you're helping create an industry. When you're leading an industry, it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of thoughtfulness from different disciplines coming together with a common goal, a common vision, and setting these design principles. And it's a lot of hard work. We've heard the term farming is a difficult industry. Well, it's also difficult in indoor farming as it is in outdoor farming. Our challenges are different. In some cases, they're much less. If you think of pest resistance, if you think of drought resistance, the way we grow plants, we just think differently. We have some challenges are less, some challenges are more, but we have to recreate what nature does in the field. So it's not about sun and soil, it's about what spectrum of light, at what intensity, at what frequency a plant wants. It's about what nutrients and micronutrients a plant wants. So here, all of those plant biologists that are successful at AeroFarms also have a very strong understanding of statistics. And we are as much a data science company as we are a vertical farming company. So in this farm, there are thousands of sensors, and these sensors are helping us be better farmers and pay attention to the details of farming. And what's exciting, and one of my biggest surprises in the journey, is where I used to think from a business plan standpoint, we're about disintermediating the supply chain, producing local food, where now it turns out we could compete in tastes and textures and nutritional density. And this is kind of cool. If you think of agriculture and where ag tech goes, if you think of Monsanto, Bayer, Dow, DuPont, Syngenta, most of their efforts are on like GMO and the genetics or just best of breeding in the genetics of a plant. We are, at AeroFarms, we don't use GMO. It's not really available in the specialty crop space, but we're not that good at understanding genetics. What we're good at is the environmental conditions and how to stress a plant. So just like when you think of the age-old conversation of nature versus nurture, what makes us who we are? Is it nature? Is it who our parents are? Am I more likely to be tall or short or blonde hair or dark hair, whatever it is? That's the genetic side. Or how much of it is nurture, where we grew up. I grew up in New York City, went to that school, whatever. I eat healthy, I sleep healthy, I exercise, et cetera, et cetera. That changes my biochemistry. In the same way, we think of plants. We literally get them to eat differently, exercise differently, sleep differently. As funny as that sounds, we do, to stress them and change their phytochemistry. So here, we could stress a plant, and we could, as an example, take a kale, where people like kale because it's highly nutritious, but they don't like it because it's very rough and very bitter. We could take a kale, not genetically stress, but environmentally stress it, so it's more tender, more nutritionally dense, less bitter. We do that with an arugula, maybe amplify a pepperiness. So here, where the criticism of indoor agriculture is food doesn't taste good, just giving it different things at the right time and the right amount changes that phytochemistry to where at AeroFarms often the compliment is, this is the best product people have ever had. And that's exciting, and it also made us realize that there's a possibility of unleashing an understanding of plant biology that the world's never thought of. And here, if you think of testing these conditions and stressing a plant out in the field, it's very hard to do because you have a lot of variability. Sun, temperature, humidity, it's just hard to really experiment. Here, our plant scientists are constantly changing an aspect of how we grow. What if you give a little more water? What if you give a little less water? What if you change the temperature, the pH, the humidity? And all of this, so how we use 95% less water, a lot of it has to do with, for example, the filtration system. So we want to take algae out, and at the same time, we want to leave nutrients and micronutrients in. It's a lot of trial and error, and there are a lot of design changes of where air hits the plant, how CO2 hits the plant, what spectrum. I could give a different burst of spectrum, stress a plant where all of a sudden it creates, for example, antioxidants, and then you have a high antioxidant kale, arugula, whatever it is. So we've grown 300 different varieties. We think we could grow anything. It's not a question of, from a technology standpoint, can we do it? It's more a question from an economic standpoint. Does it make economic sense? And we're starting where it makes economic sense. In this space, leafy greens, we sell our biggest customer, ShopRite. We also sell to Fresh Direct, which is an online retailer, to Whole Foods, to Compass Group, which is a large food service company. Ciabra is a place in Newark. And we sell, we're very proud, we sell at the same price that they buy from the field farmers in the category of organics. We're not technically organic because we don't grow in soil, but it's positioned as beyond organic because it's not organic pesticides, it's zero pesticides. So we're excited for what the future holds. We're excited for how the data science is coming together, how all of the kind of thoughtfulness, whether it's internal at AeroFarms or partnering with others, are coming together. Our financial partners, I'll share two of our bigger ones, are Prudential Financial and Goldman Sachs. And this is illustrative of how, at the senior debt level, the economics can work. And now as we expand elsewhere, it's certainly easier with a capital intensity of indoor growing to get the senior debt involved. This is an image of machine vision and how we apply to capture more data points of the farm. And it's also creating some interesting partnerships that are less obvious. I'll leave you with this last image. We, from a social standpoint, put a farm inside a school to try and inspire kids, get them to understand in Newark what farming can mean, and it changed over working in this farm for 4 years. Michelle Obama visited it, appreciating that we're getting the kids to eat the greens instead of the fries. It's really changing eating habits and behavioral habits to the healthiest food group of all food. So anyway, I'll leave you with that. I see I'm out of time, but I hope our story helps inspires others to be proactive in figuring out ways where we could have a positive impact on the world. Thank you.